All right, hello everyone. It's Reimmerse, and we actually made it to 1 month. This is my 1 month update. Hopefully the mic should be better for this one. I actually got out my fancy dynamic mic instead of my shitty condenser mic. Um, but yeah, a full month, as you can see on my Anki chart here. And man, things have been going pretty good. I'm not gonna lie, things have been going pretty good. There's definitely still some areas to improve, and I'm gonna talk about that. But overall, I would say I've been really enjoying my time with Korean, and I think things have been going well. So I'm gonna start with Anki just because I think that's like where I'm at the strongest. So if we take a look at my stats, so I've been doing two decks. I've been doing the um, Refold 1K deck and the man, what's the guy's name? I already forgot. Uh, what is this guy's? Retro. Retro. I'm so sorry, Retro. Retro is 500 words deck. Um, so we can look. So you can see 4 straight weeks. The reviews have, they obviously went up a lot. So I've been doing 10 new words a day for each deck, so 20 in total. And I remember when I was doing Japanese, 20 words, like even like 10 words a day felt like overwhelming. Like, I remember I was doing like hours of Anki was horrible. And like now I'm doing 20 words a day and it feels fine. Like today, my reviews were 24 minutes. Like usually I do it at school during my lunch period and I have time to eat lunch and then do my reviews. And it's super easy. And again, that's 20 words a day. Now, something you'll notice is these are all learning. There's like literally zero young. And so the reason that is because my settings look like this. I took a screenshot because whenever I change the settings on the Anki desktop app, it crashes. I don't know. But the settings look like this. Let me make it nice and big for you guys. So the big thing is this learning steps. 1 minute, 15 minutes, 1 day, 3 days, 6 days. So by default, Anki is just 1 minute and 15 minutes. Um, and I remember in the past, what I found is seeing that card 2 times in 1 day is just not enough for me to get it. Um, and the problem is once that card is marked as learned after the 15 minutes, like your lapses, like start counting up. So you could see a card, and it will be your first day reviewing that card, and like sometimes you forget a card. I mean, maybe like some people don't, but I find that a lot. I'll see it the next day, and I already forgot it. 1 day wasn't enough, but I don't want to have to start counting my lapses like immediately after. And so I took some inspiration from Retro for this, is you just make the learning steps um very spread out. And it's really no different than having a learned card that you see 1 day, 3 days, 6 days. But because these are part of the learning steps, what it means is that if you fail a card at the 1 day, the 3 days, or the 6 days, it just goes back to 1 minute. No problem. It's still learning, right? It doesn't start counting as your lapses. And I've totally found where there are words where I'll get them wrong, a couple days in a row, but then it starts to click, and that's when I know that word. Um, but the consequences of that are that my stats look kind of weird, because it takes over a week for me to even graduate a card into learned. And once you graduate a card into learned, the immediately following interval is 15 days, right? So it takes a week for a card to be learned, and then it takes 2 weeks for a card to be shown to me. So the cards that I learned the first week are just now coming around again, right? So that's why there's almost no um, young cards being reviewed. Um, the rest of the settings I have based off the Refold Loki Anki. Honestly, I really don't know what they're doing all that much, but I found that those learning step changes made a big difference for me. Um, but yeah, I found that the reviews to be totally doable. So we're looking at around 500 cards. Now, I would say probably like 50 of those are words that I maybe like 20 or 30 are words that overlap between the two decks, right? Because they're all like very common words. So there's a lot of words that overlap. And then there's also in the 500 words deck, there's like English words. Like today there was like elevator, but just like written in Hangul, right? So I don't know if I'd consider that a word. I still consider it a word because just like getting exposure to knowing like, oh, like that English word kind of uh written in Hangul is like a Korean word, right? And so even though I already know like the meaning, like it just kind of preparing yourself to see that word used in that way. So around 500 words in 1 month, which is pretty cool. And we'll talk more about how that's really impacted my immersion. Um, so something interesting you can see is like I get the learning cards wrong 30% of the time. And again, these are cards that are still like all of cards where, maybe I got it right the first day and the second day, but then like the 3 days interval, that's when I get it wrong, right? So 30% of the time I'm getting the learning cards wrong. But by the time they become young cards, I'm around a 90% retention rate, which is about what I'm looking for. Um, so my vocabulary feels pretty strong right now. Um, it's at the point, and I'll talk more about this in the immersion section, where I recognize like a word in my immersion like at least every couple sentences, which feels awesome. I still need to learn the numbers. That's like super important. I remember in the like Japanese decks I was doing a long time ago, they had the numbers and like the days of the week in there, but I don't know if they're not in here or I haven't reached them yet. But those seem like pretty important to learn. And then also I want to talk about a lot of the words, especially in like the 500 words deck is just words. The refill deck is sentences, right? And a lot of the words, like you don't really memorize the word, you like memorize the sentence. Um, or you only understand it because of the context. And like there are words where I'll like have it in one deck, right? Like I'll see it in this deck, and then it will come up in this deck, and I'll be like, I totally could have got that word in the sentence, but just seeing the word on its own, like I couldn't get it. Um, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? Like the whole point of the anki is just to like create the dictionary entries in your brain, like just have yourself expose that word, see that word, and then in the immersion is really where it gets hammered in. So that's okay, but that's just something interesting. Like these words, half of them, if you see them in the wrong context or not the context you're expecting or no context at all, like you're not able to recall it, or I'm not able to recall it. Cool. So anki has been great. Let's talk about grammar. Um, so I've been going through. I haven't been going through this grammar guide as much. I think it is very good. I've found that like reading through these articles is hard. And so what I've been doing is I've been watching a lot of videos. So there's the Go Billy Korean, which these have been really helpful, and then also I watch a lot of these like talk to me in Korean videos. These are awesome, like the Q&As, the Korean like live class abridged. Um, yeah, I just have this whole playlist of these I've been reading or watching. And I found that like at least just for me personally, watching these videos is a little bit easier for me than reading an article. But I do still think that this Notion guide is very helpful for um, like having a list of topics to cover. Um, and so this isn't really caught up to where my knowledge is, right? Like I know uh, Go Sheepda, right? And I know Mon. Like that was actually in one of my cards today. And I know Go Eat That, right? Like that was also one of my cards. Um, but it's totally cool because like I can watch the videos and I can see it in the cards, the Anki cards, and I can go through this and read it. And once you already know it, like just reading it as a review is much easier than trying to read it for the first time. And then you can kind of this can just be a big checklist, right? And if you already know it, it's easy to check off. Um, Now on the grammar, I will say like everything makes sense. Like there hasn't been a lot of stuff where I'm like, wow, like that's so weird. That doesn't make a lot of sense. Like the irregular conjugations, like there's not that many irregulars, and like the patterns are pretty simple. And all the verb conjugations, like you're like I like at first you let me pull it up. Uh, Here. Like at first you see this, and you're like, holy shit. And then you like actually learn what's going on. And it's like, oh, like it's pretty simple, right? Like it's nothing too crazy. And it just I don't know. I find the Korean grammar to be pretty chill, and pretty logical, which I like. Um, yeah. So now let's talk about immersion. Um, so I've been not doing as much immersion as I should. I would say around 30 minutes to an hour per day. A lot of it has been uh, passive immersion, like passive, like active listening. Like there's just kind of like playing it, and then there's active listening. And I do both, but there's a good amount of active listening, and I do it with this podcast. It's called Tayoni's Korean Podcast, and she just has like a really smooth voice. I don't know how to describe it. It's very nice to listen to, and I've listened through like every single episode, and I just like whenever I'm doing anything, I just put it on in the background, and even in these, like I'll recognize words, and like today, I think it was in the episode. Yeah, actually, I don't even know, but there was one where it was like, she was on the bus and she rode the bus, which is like tada, right? And I caught that one. But yeah, this is what I do for both active listening and passive listening. And then for uh like normal immersion, what I do is I watch like K-pop variety content. So when I watch it on my phone, I try to have Korean subtitles on. Sometimes I have English subtitles on. Um, Especially like there are some groups where like you actually like want to know what's happening, right? Like they're doing an interview with like Le Seraphim, and like I like Le Seraphim, right? Like I want to know what they're talking about in that interview, and I find like I know in the refill guide like and obviously like your target language or native language subs are a crutch, right? Like you can't be on them forever. But I find that in the beginning it can help uh just kind of make the content watchable, and also I find that there are some times where there will be a word uh that I'll like see in English, and then it'll be like, oh, like I remember that I know that word, where I wouldn't have just caught it out because there's like so much Korean coming at you, right? But I'll see a word that like I know, and then go back and kind of refresh myself on that word. Or there will be bits where um there was like a word that I wouldn't have gathered just from reading the Korean, but having like the context of the translation of the sentence, I'm able to gather, right? So not ideal, but there are some pros. Something interesting is some of the content. Like I really like CSR, Chotsarang, and they don't have English subtitles for a lot of their content, and it actually makes it like interesting because I want to watch the Korean content, right? Because like I want to watch their content, and I know their options, right? There are no subtitles, so there's like no temptation, and so I watch the Korean content and I try to read every single word, and it's pretty chill. So on my phone, I would say the experience is a little worse because on the computer. So here's what my setup looks like. I have Migaku, and man, Migaku is so awesome. There definitely is like some level of I forgot what the exact term like Refold likes to use for it, right? But there's just like watching and letting everything kind of float by you that you don't understand, and then there's like pausing and going through every single word and reading it. Um, I like Migaku because a lot of words you'll like know or but you'll forget that you know them. So being able to mark a word as seen, which is like this yellow, I actually know this word here, kind of reminds you that you know that word. So like inhyong hatayo. Yeah, I actually don't know this word, but interesting. And I do know this word. But I like I've been marking words that seem like they would be common enough to uh, be worth learning, and then also words that like you've seen in your cards but you don't like have committed to memory. Um, but it's nice to just like have like really quick translations and be able to see like good one target sentences and follow along. And the subtitles are great. There are some things with Migaku where like it will interpret text kind of weird. Like it will see like a verb as like two words instead of like the conjugated verb that it is, or just like some weird stuff. Um, but overall, it's really good. Another thing that's really awesome that I found from the Discord server is Mirene. Let me pull that up. Uh, here. So when I watch content, I'll have the Migaku dictionary up on the side, and this is really good because when you're like watching something, right? Like let's say I want to know this word, I can just press E, and I have the dictionary entry, and there's audio, and there's like sample sentences and pictures. And I haven't started sentence mining yet. I probably should soon. Like I'm probably ready to start sentence mining right now. But Migaku makes it really easy to do that. And then on my other monitor, I'll have a dictionary up and Murine. Murine is awesome. So like you'll take a sentence and it will break it down, right? It will deconjugate everything. It will like makes the grammar like very clear, right? Like this is an object phrase, which is part of this subordinate clause, which attaches to this main clause with this adverb, right? Like it's awesome. Um, and this is super helpful for breaking down sentences that are like a little bit outside of your like grammar knowledge, or maybe there's like a grammar pattern that you know, but you want to like see exactly how that sentence breaks down in terms of meaning. So Mirne has been awesome. But in my immersion, uh, like I mean, we can just kind of look at the subtitles. Like the Migaku isn't exactly kind of matched up with my knowledge, but you know there is words I know like every couple sentences, which is awesome, right? It's just really cool. And every so often there will be like a whole line, right? Like Igo nomu gyo or gyo yo yo. I don't know. I know it's like very cute, right? Very cute. Um, and so it's cool, right? Like it's very cool. Like even can't understand that much, but I can understand some, which feels really nice, very motivating. Um, that's all I have on kind of audio immersion. As for books for reading, so I've been reading the Talk to Me in Korean, Easy Reading for Beginners. I read the first two stories, and I don't think I read the first two stories. I read the first story, and this is hard, especially when like you don't know half the words, probably like 30% of the words. And I think uh, I'm getting like bogged down too much and looking stuff up. I think with this kind of stuff, you just got when you run to a word, just like look up the meaning, and then just move on, right? You just gotta kind of get through the stuff. Just read it. Just read it. Like the value is just reading it, just getting exposed to it. And these are definitely kind of things where like you just quickly read through these. Remember, like look up the stuff you don't know, and then come back later, right? Like they're quick, easy. But I think if you get bogged down too much, it kind of loses a lot of the value. But I think this is like a good level, to start. I mean, there's like a lot of good vocabulary in here, a lot of good topics, and like it's very well made. Obviously, it's like it's made for beginning resource. Um, I've also been reading these Storybooks Canada Korean ones, and these are like very very simple. These level 1 ones, um, and oh, I know that word. Oda. Oda. Um, so yeah, these stories are pretty simple, and I read through some of them. But yeah, the reading's hard. Because in the videos, it just kind of keeps going, whether you understand it or not. But the reading, you'll hit a word you don't know, and like everything just like grinds to a halt, right? But definitely something to keep working. Um, so yeah, finally, what are my goals for next month? So school ends this week actually, so I'll have a lot more time. I think I should be looking to do an hour of active immersion minimum, and I think that's totally reasonable. And it's funny when I don't do a ton of like super super intensive immersion, but when I do, like I can feel like the gears turning. I could feel the knowledge being gained, right? Like when you're like understanding some sentences and looking up the words you don't, and like I can tell that it works. I just gotta kind of do it a little bit more. I think the Anki, I think I'm doing really good, so I'm just gonna stick with that. We'll see if the amount of reviews changes once I start hitting those like learned words on the 2 week graduating interval. So we'll see what the retention rate looks like on those. Um, and then the grammar, kind of just keep watching the videos like I'm doing and kind of going through the articles and crossing stuff off in the Notion guide. But yeah, for sure. I mean, like I said, it was a pretty good month. I'm feeling good for next month. And yeah, thank you all for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in 4 weeks. See ya.